Hello, and welcome to the Sonic Fruit Film Podcast, where we aim to celebrate movies through the simple act of talking about our favourites. I'm Bennet Maples, and today I'm joined by the irrepressible Imogen Church, actress and voice artist, and by the vivacious Carl Cole, accomplished composer whose credits include this very berry. In this episode, we're discussing Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which was not a dramatisation of the 60s Vim commercials as we'd expected, but is, it turns out, a cracking movie. So let's talk about Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, a film which I don't understand, but I absolutely love anyway. I did watch this one because I knew we were going to be talking about it, and I did sit all the way through it thinking, I don't know how to talk about this. This is too clever or just too detailed. There's so much going on. That's the thing that I think really... I'd remembered that. I think even if you'd asked me to talk about it without having rewatched it, that's the thing I would have said. The creativity in it.
It's the stuff of film studies courses.
Absolutely. But it works.
Decades.
Whereas there's a lot of films like that where you just go, oh, look, there's an image within an image, or they're looking at themselves, or, they can hear that, but they're actually doing this, and it's just for the sake of it. Yeah. This is, I guess because it's Kaufman, it's the perfect coming together, really, of script and director, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because, I mean, any existentialist territory you step onto is potentially fraught with
pretension.
Yes. Yeah, just terrible pretension. And I think if you're going to attempt something like that, you have to be really clever. I mean, to make it work.
Well,
you've really got to understand.
What struck me watching it again is how the movie jumps about. And as a viewer, on a first viewing, it's so easy to... I can imagine it's very easy to get lost. I know the film really well because I've watched it a lot. But actually, having watched it, I go, I know where they are. Because you know, because the colour of her hair.
I was going to say, genius move on the colour of the hair.
A great
she's got
device.
The blue and the roots. Okay.
Yeah, and so you can tell in terms of a timeline where you are because of the colour of her hair. But I don't know if I picked that up first time I watched.
I was about to say the same thing. Although I saw it and thought exactly the same thing. I thought that's a really clever device, and it's very clear what's going on. I actually remember the first time I watched the film getting to the end and realising that I could have been keeping track like that, but hadn't been. And the reason is because she says very early on, I change the colour of my hair all the time. So actually, you're not sure whether, is it just changing between blue and orange because that's what she's doing, or are we now in...
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be watching the hair, because there are details such as how low are the roots. It's not just pure blue or pure orange. Okay. It's blue with roots. Or you know what I mean? Yeah, so you've really got to be paying attention to the hair for it to work, because that's a really good point. And in theory, maybe even that doesn't work because I change it all the time. I mean, maybe that was a deliberate choice in order to leave an out for, well, is it? Are you? Is she?
But I guess when the penny drops, there's quite a reward as a film viewer. You all of a sudden a lot makes sense the minute you understand. Oh, actually, the beginning of the film is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I started saying I don't understand it. I'm sure there's lots of levels on which Kaufman has written psychological subtleties that completely pass me by. But actually, I still find it very rewarding for the fact that you do follow it. It's so brilliantly made, despite all the extraordinary layers and convolutions that are in it.
But
it
again,
is still
that's
made.
why you can watch it again and again and again.
Absolutely, so that you can get
and
more
eventually go, oh my God, I didn't even notice that.
And I feel like this particular film taps into a very, very unique emotion that many films don't, and it really epitomises melancholy. This film for me, it's so sad. It's a tragic love story that actually has a very optimistic ending, and I think that in itself is
I was going to ask that because when I rewatched it, my wife said, "Oh no, I'll watch that again," but I do find it very sad. And I thought, actually, that's interesting because I don't think I did the first time I watched it, but I understand because there is a very kind of melancholic feel to the music, and there's a sort of look to it, and obviously the characters are fairly unhappy with their lives. But I just find it really beautifully optimistic. That sense of, there are things that we just want to get rid of in our lives, but actually, every moment is important. Whether it's good or bad, they're all what make us who we are, and you can't start trying to get rid of stuff like that because it's all important to building who we are as grown-ups.
And in terms of talking about the crippling sadness of it, we've got to talk about Jim Carrey.
Yeah, what a performance.
I mean, he's utterly incredible.
Coming off of the back of being essentially a comedic actor and only a character known for Ace Ventura and The Mask. All of a sudden, he delivers this performance where he still has. You can see there's a scene
It
where
started
he
with Truman Show, I think, didn't
right
it?
at the beginning. The Truman Show is another wonderful film. Maybe another time we'll talk about that.
Yeah, it's quite characterful though, still, isn't it? You can still see that that's the guy who was Ace Ventura. There's still quite a lot of.
There's a scene at the beginning where he decides not to go to work. And he just decides very impulsively to go and catch a train out to the wilderness, which is very obviously pivotal to the plot. Yeah. But it's his run. He literally, he gets it in his mind, and all of a sudden you go, "Oh, I am watching Jim Carrey. That's Jim Carrey's run right there, bandy legs and all." He's just going.
Well, the bit that I'd forgotten about as well, which is also very Jim Carrey, is when he goes back into his mind, when he's trying to lose himself in memories that they won't find him in, he becomes a child. And that's a very,
I love that.
Then you go, okay, well, that's that's why they started thinking maybe he was the guy for the role. Because I mean, one of the things I think you think when you're watching it is he's brilliant, but who thought to cast him?
I know. Who actually?
But actually, I did think at that
I'll
moment,
look up the casting director.
when he
smooth,
when he becomes his younger self.
Gene McCarthy, thank you.
Yeah, good old Gene.
Because he is astonishing, but it supports my most people's long-held theory that comedy always stems from tragedy, and it does.
Yeah.
And this is why comedians quite often make really messed up, really good actors. If they have enough insight, if they're brave enough to kind of tap into that. I mean, it's after Playwright, I think it has the highest incidences of severe depression as a profession, for a reason.
Yeah, I was impressed and surprised by how funny it was. Actually, there were a lot of, and again, I guess that's maybe where he was a great choice because there's a lot of just little thrown away comments and references, sort of knowing references to how crazy it is that we're in a world that's watching itself within another world.
Yeah.
That because it's him somehow, I think it it's allowed to be funny.
Yeah. But other interesting casting choices, Gene, I'm talking to you. Elijah Wood. Yeah. Starting to see him.
Frodo himself is.
Yeah. Frodo himself.
Actually, a very unlikable character.
Yeah.
Incredibly.
Making interesting choices.
Character. Yeah.
And going, actually, I've done the massive Hollywood. He actually owns his own record label now. So
really?
He's a muso as well.
Excellent.
But yeah, it's nice to see him actively making choices that will get him away from the place he'd been put. Yeah. And from all that success and just taking it down and making really stereotypical choices for himself because he's become this brand.
I think the cast generally, Kate Winslet, we just kind of assume can be extraordinary and can inhabit roles of bizarre extremes, but I don't question her in this film at all.
Yeah.
And it's pretty far from the Kate Winslet you see if she's an interview.
Yeah.
Again,
and she was nominated for that anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Not an obvious choice. I wouldn't have thought in terms of casting at all. But
So maybe
again a great performance, and it's the characters and it's the actors that really carry this film. Obviously, it's a wonderful plot, it's a wonderful script, but the characters really carry it. Mark Ruffalo is the technician as well. Wow, what a great...
Completely forgotten it was him.
What a great
actor. Because it's un-Ruffalo.
Yeah.
It's very un-Ruffalo.
There's one for the new dictionary.
But again, I'm just... going back to Jim, we're talking about it, the cast carrying it and the characters and the portrayals, and also the crippling sadness, but the ultimate positivity. To be able to play a role that's that sad and that miserable and yet still find shades of light in it is so hard. And most people can't do it because most people can either do comedy or they can do drama. And if they do drama, it's incredibly felt and serious, and they can cry like
if you'd had a dramatic actor in this film, it would have been... It could have been very emotional, but it could have been awful. I mean,
it would have been miserable.
Right.
It would have been an essay in miserablism. And I don't know that would work from an existentialist point of view because it would just... Well, it would be in the vein of let's just all top ourselves. It wouldn't...
Well, it would also... I think it would topple the pretension.
Yes.
I think we'd be over that pinnacle.
Yeah.
I think it is Jim Carrey that keeps it as a watchable, entertaining, fun film that has all these layers rather than being just, pretentious.
Even his face in it. I have images of his face in the film. He's such an expressive face, obviously, which plays into it. But just the set of his jowls are just depressed.
Yeah.
And so the fact that he can still find those moments to pick it up and make us kind of go, oh, yeah, there kind of is, we can do that, or there is hope for that, or, yeah, it just, amazing.
Well,
I think the best thing I've seen him do.
The theme running through the movie is that, what I love about it is that it's what real life is like. It's a love story, but it's that love is difficult and that love doesn't. It's not You've Got Mail or one of like a traditional rom-com. That's it. That's another episode as well. But it's that love can be very difficult and it's a bumpy ride, and I love that about it because that then makes me relate to the characters a lot more. It is optimistic and it is sad and melancholy as well, but it's also very grounded. Kate Winslet is a very believable character because she has some significant flaws, as does Jim Carrey's character as well. And
she's quite extreme though. I mean, he's just a little bit pathetic, isn't he? But I mean, she is nuts.
She's really
and
messed
she's
up.
clearly meant to be.
We probably all know.
We've all met her.
When we were talking about Kate Winslet
I've probably been her at some point.
When we talked about Kate Winslet earlier, your face was doing something that suggested to me that you have thoughts about Kate Winslet. So before we leave the casting, what's your acting perspective on Kate?
Well, it's a larger picture because in this I think she's brilliant.
Yeah.
I think she's fantastic in this. And when she got that nomination for it, I was like, oh, nice to see a nomination for not being paraplegic. You know, that joke she makes in Extras in which she's brilliant as well. She says, oh, you got to play a cripple. I just feel she's lost her way.
Okay.
But that's for another day.
Fair enough.
Did you like her in Titanic? Sorry, am I putting you on the spot? Don't answer that.
Should we do a Titanic one?
Yeah.
We'll give Imogen a few gins and then do Titanic.
I'd love for us to do Titanic. That would be fantastic. Oh, Billy Zane, where's he?
Yeah. Okay, keep listening. We'll do a Titanic podcast.
Sorry.
Music on this one.
Yeah.
I remembered it very much I thought for the music, but I'm remembering the songs. I mean,
Great choice of songs.
It's a painfully cool soundtrack, isn't it? There's a lot of Beck and all those people that you really should have if you're a kind of hit New York
Beck
filmmaker.
Klaxons cover. I'm trying to think of the name of the song. Come on, Imogen, quick.
Oh God, I've gone on to
Everybody's
Michel
Got a Love
Gondry.
Sometime. Is that it?
Yeah. I don't know what the title is.
But yeah, I mean, the original song is lovely, and Beck does a really soulful, very raw version, and actually sings it ever so slightly out of tune, which is very
like
nice.
that.
Actually,
but
it just feels very. It feels very real, and you've got Mr. Blue Sky as well, which actually I never liked that song until I saw it in this film. Mm-hmm. And now I love that song. It's genuinely, I listen to it in awe as how well constructed a song that really is.
So what's in the score of this? Because I have to say, again, I probably wouldn't have remembered the score.
Okay, so this is John Bryan, who I first kind of cropped up on my radar when he produced a Fiona Apple album called When the Pawn, which I bought on the strength of the production. Not the kind of thing, being that I'm traditionally from a rock and metal background, not the kind of thing I'd generally be into because it's quite jazzy. But it was just wonderful. The instrumentation is stunning. And this is John Bryan's trademark. I mean, his use of instrumentation is unlike anyone else that's in that LA circuit at the minute. And so to talk about that, I mean, he uses a lot of vintage instruments. He does a lot of... plays detuned pianos or old pianos. He doesn't do it. Not everything is crisp and clean. And I think in regards to this film, the music is just amazing for the fact that there's a main theme that comes up. I've even heard it on a banking advert as well. They've used it, which shows you in a way. The score in general is quite uplifting and quite quirky, which set against the backdrop of this very sad love story is quite refreshing. And I don't think any other composer would have played it this way. And I think that if another composer had come to it, it could so easily slip into being quite a depressing film. More depressing perhaps than it is for some people, but the score really helps lift it a few notches in places. Because there's a scene in it where they're in the marketplace and they start having a row, and actually he plays this incredibly quirky pizzicato strings motif that just lifts it almost into a comedy. And so he does a really great job of juxtaposing the action on screen with the music. That being said, it's quite a difficult score because there's certain cues that get reused again and again and again. So actually how much of
but then
the
that
action...
kind of suits the film, doesn't it? There's a lot of
Exactly,
circles
yeah.
within circles
And so it's just a very interesting one because it is the fact that you'll have one main theme that will actually come back identically later on, and I don't know if this is a conscious choice because of the nature of the film and the content being about retreading old memories and things like that, or whether it was just a studio decision to reuse certain cues rather than others.
We know Michel Gondry's got a history with music. He started with music videos and things, isn't he? He's quite a big MTV
If you say
generation.
so.
Oh yeah, he's done that. So yeah, I would imagine it's very much a conscious thing. I would think he was probably very hands-on with what the music did.
With the way John Bryan approaches it, he uses things like mellotron, which is an instrument that plays little bits of tape. It's like an original sampler, and he uses that quite a lot. I think there's some vinyl recordings of acoustic guitars that have been tuned down as well. Loads of fascinating sounds in the score that other composers just don't really do that stuff. Again, possibly down to time constraints and the kind of the presumption about what a score for a film should be. And I think John Bryan really bucks that trend.
Different background in terms of an awful lot of composers are coming from a very musical compositional background, whereas John Bryan's much more of a producer, isn't he? He's very so presumably he's got a history in the studio playing with sound and
even down to it doesn't sound like a lot of these instruments have been recorded on a scoring stage. They sound very dry, very raw, and in turn that makes them feel a little edgier and a little bit more emotional, and it helps add to that quirky sound as well. Lots of use of woodwinds, but singular woodwinds, not whole groups, and I think that's a very nice touch as well.
Probably makes it more relatable as well, I would say. It makes it feel less epic, which is lovely, but it makes it feel more real. And as you were saying, as though you could identify with it and go, God, yeah, love is a bit shit, isn't it? Yeah. Whereas those big epic scores, they're wonderful for escapism, but they kind of block you off in a way.
Yeah. And I guess that's the contradiction within this film, because it is essentially a science fiction film as well.
Yeah.
We're talking about, the ability to erase certain memories in people's brains, and we're not there yet. So I guess in a way and I think that's a very tricky one, isn't it? Ultimately, the film is it's a love story, but it's set in a near future, I guess, or an alternative reality where, this technology...
I think it's very much a Charlie Kaufman kind of reality. I think everything that he
inside
is
Kaufman's
somehow,
head.
Yeah.
But I can't gush enough about John Bryan's work. I mean, I genuinely love his approach and the fact that he is doing things that other people aren't at the minute. And I look forward to hearing more, because he's getting more into...
Well, that struck me really about the visuals as well. So I think everything that you've just been saying, I was thinking that really sits well with what Condry's doing visually. Because one of the things that I thought was really interesting is watching in-camera effects. There's so many kind of visual quirks and things.
They're so subtle.
Yeah.
And so well done.
Absolutely. And there's computed stuff in there as well. There's split screen things where you do get two Jim Carreys in the same screen, but you often get him. He'll disappear off one side of the camera and he's clearly run around the back of the camera and come back on again. You know physically how they've done it, but actually that's really refreshing. I think it felt this, and lots of screens with stuff on. There's a lovely bit which is just really subtle where he's watching himself. In his initial interview in the doctor's surgery, and he walks behind a TV screen, and then he's on the TV screen, and and there's clearly just a camera in the back of the TV screen, but it's really effective. It just means that in all the frames, there's just something going on, particularly once you get past that first 20 minutes, and
the use of spotlighting as well. I think with the camera.
Yeah, I mean it's a really crude effect in lots of ways, but it's perfect for that moment. And as we said at the beginning, it could have been in many other films just horribly pretentious. But at that point, the world is being eradicated, and the only thing that's left in this memory is him and that little spotlight of reality. Yeah, it's great.
Well, you were right, Bennet. Michel
Was I?
Gondry
Oh, thank goodness.
set up a pop rock band in the early days called Oui Oui.
Oui, oui.
So well done.
Not mais oui.
Not mais oui, oui oui.
Okay.
Congratulations. You've won a prize. It's a toy duck.
And then we're Gondry. Which only leaves me to hang my head in shame and thank Carl and Imogen for joining me. Thank you for listening. And don't forget, you can always email us at podcast@sonicfruit.co.uk or via Twitter at @sonic_fruit. The Sonic Fruit Film Podcast is produced by Sonic Fruit with music by Carl Cole and engineering by Jake Kenny and Jordan Brett. For more information, check out sonicfruit.co.uk.